The first warning came from the deep space monitoring stations orbiting Neptune. Commander Sarah Chen stared at the readouts on her screen, her coffee growing cold as the numbers refused to make sense. The gravitational anomaly was massive, far beyond anything they had recorded before. It wasn't moving through space like a comet or asteroid. It was growing, expanding like a wound in reality itself. "Ma'am, you need to see this," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the adjacent console. His voice carried that particular tremor that meant bad news was about to get worse. The anomaly isn't just growing. It's pulling in everything around it. The Kuiper Belt objects are being dragged toward whatever this thing is. Sarah pushed back from her station and walked over to Rodriguez's display. The holographic projection showed the outer solar system, with bright dots representing asteroids, comets, and debris. As she watched, the dots began moving in spirals, all flowing toward a dark region that seemed to bend light around its edges. "How big is it now?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Approximately 15 billion kilometers across and expanding, at roughly 1% of light speed," Rodriguez replied. "At this rate, it will reach Pluto's orbit within 72 hours. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had spent 12 years monitoring the outer reaches of the solar system, cataloging every piece of space debris larger than a baseball. She had seen solar flares, rogue asteroids, and the occasional comet that strayed too close to the sun. But this was something entirely different. This was something that shouldn't exist according to every law of physics she knew. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," she ordered. Priority Alpha. The communication delay to Earth was over 4 hours at their current distance, but this couldn't wait for the usual weekly reports. As Rodriguez worked to establish the connection, Sarah pulled up every piece of data they had collected over the past 6 months. She was looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that might have predicted this event. What she found made her blood run cold. Starting 3 months ago, their instruments had detected subtle variations in the cosmic background radiation. Nothing dramatic, just minor fluctuations that could have been equipment malfunctions or solar interference. But looking at the data now, Sarah could see they formed a pattern. The fluctuations had been growing stronger, more frequent, and they all pointed toward the same region of space where the anomaly had appeared. "Ma'am, I have Admiral Morrison on the line," Rodriguez announced. Sarah straightened her uniform and activated the transmitter. "Admiral, this is Commander Chen at Neptune Station. We have a code black situation developing in the outer system. I'm transmitting all our data now, but you need to know that we have an expanding gravitational anomaly of unprecedented scale. Based on current projections, it will reach the inner planets within 6 months. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Sir, I don't think this is a natural phenomenon." The hours that followed were a blur of data analysis, emergency conferences, and increasingly desperate calculations. Scientists across the solar system worked frantically to understand what they were dealing with. The anomaly defied explanation. It absorbed matter and energy without releasing anything in return. It warped space-time in ways that violated the fundamental principles of relativity. Most disturbing of all, it seemed to be accelerating. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, joined the emergency session via quantum entanglement communicator. Her image flickered slightly as the exotic technology struggled to maintain connection across the vast distance. "I've reviewed all the data," she announced to the assembled scientists and military officers. "What we're looking at isn't a black hole, isn't a wormhole, and isn't any natural phenomenon we've ever encountered. The mathematical models suggest we're dealing with what can only be described as an artificial construct." "Artificial?" Admiral Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "You mean someone built this thing?" "Not built exactly. It's more like someone tore a hole in the fabric of space itself. The energy requirements would be beyond anything we can imagine. We're talking about technology that makes our most advanced fusion reactors look like campfires." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature control. "Doctor, are you saying this is an attack?" "I'm saying this is deliberate. Whether it's an attack, an experiment, or something else entirely, I can't determine from the data. But one thing is certain. Whatever intelligence created this has capabilities far beyond our own. The next 72 hours proved Dr. Vasquez correct. The anomaly consumed Pluto and its moons without slowing down. The dwarf planet simply vanished into the expanding darkness, leaving no trace of its existence. Long-range sensors detected brief gravitational pulses, as Charon and the smaller moons followed their primary into oblivion. As news of Pluto's destruction spread throughout the solar system, panic began to set in. Mars colonies reported massive emigration requests. The asteroid miners abandoned their claims and headed for the inner planets. Even the normally stoic researchers on the Jupiter moon started demanding evacuation. But it was the message from the Tau Ceti listening post that changed everything. Dr. James Park had spent 15 years monitoring radio signals from nearby star systems, searching for signs of intelligent life. His excitement was palpable even through the static-filled transmission. Earth Command, this is Tau Ceti Station. We've detected organized radio transmissions from multiple star systems. The signal started approximately 6 hours ago, all broadcasting on the same frequency. Sarah joined the emergency response team as they worked to decode the alien transmissions. The mathematics were complex, but the message was simple once they cracked the basic structure. It was a warning, repeated in dozens of different languages and formats. The devourers have awakened. Flee or face consumption. Your system has been marked for harvest. There is no defense against the abyss. The transmission included star charts showing the location of the anomaly and vector calculations that matched their own observations perfectly. Whoever sent this message knew exactly what humanity was facing. They also knew that resistance was futile. Sarah stared at the decoded message, feeling the weight of humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, the answer had finally come. They weren't alone, but their new neighbors brought only a warning of impending doom. The abyss, as the aliens called it, was not just consuming their solar system. According to the transmissions, similar events had occurred throughout the galaxy. Entire civilizations had been swallowed without trace. Their planets, their people, and their cultures erased as if they had never existed. As Sarah watched the expanding darkness creep closer to Neptune's orbit, she realized that humanity had perhaps 6 months before Earth itself would be consumed. 6 months to solve a problem that had apparently defeated every other intelligent species in the galaxy. The abyss was coming, and it was hungry. Dr. Marcus Webb had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was its refusal to accept the impossible. Standing in the emergency command center beneath Geneva, surrounded by the brightest minds from every nation on Earth, he watched that strength being tested like never before. The evacuation fleets won't be ready for another 8 months, reported General Harrison, his weathered face grim with the weight of impossible logistics. We have approximately 12,000 ships capable of interstellar travel, but they can only carry 40 million people total. Earth's population is over 9 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the room understood the mathematics. Even if they worked miracles, less than 0.5% of humanity would escape the abyss. The rest would simply vanish when the expanding darkness reached Earth. Then we don't evacuate, Marcus said quietly. Every head in the room turned toward him. Admiral Chen, who had arrived from Neptune Station 3 days ago, raised an eyebrow. Dr. Webb, with respect, denial isn't going to solve this problem. I'm not in denial, Marcus replied, pulling up a holographic display of his research data. I'm suggesting we fight. The room erupted in arguments. Voices overlapped as scientists and military officers pointed out the obvious. Dozens of advanced alien civilizations had faced the abyss and failed. Humanity had barely figured out faster-than-light travel, and even that was limited to expensive, energy-intensive jumps. What could they possibly do that others hadn't tried? Marcus waited for the noise to die down before continuing. 3 days ago, we received detailed scans from our deep space probes. The abyss isn't a natural black hole or exotic matter phenomenon. It's a machine, and machines can be broken. He manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the anomaly's structure. Look at these patterns in the gravitational distortion. They're not random. There's an underlying architecture, a framework that maintains the expansion and directs the energy absorption. If we can disrupt that framework, we might be able to collapse the entire construct. Dr. Vasquez, participating via quantum link from the Mars research station, shook her head. Marcus, the energy levels involved are beyond our comprehension. The abyss has already consumed the mass of 3 gas giants. Even if we could target this framework you're talking about, we don't have weapons capable of damaging something on that scale. Actually, we might, Marcus replied, pulling up classified files from the Deep Space Weapons Program. Project Prometheus has been developing antimatter warheads for the past 15 years. They're designed to punch through planetary defenses, but with modifications we could scale them up significantly. Admiral Morrison leaned forward. How significantly? Each warhead contains approximately 50 kilograms of antimatter. In theory, we could construct a device containing up to 500 kilograms. The explosion would release energy equivalent to 12 billion tons of TNT. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence carried a different quality. Hope was a dangerous thing when facing extinction, but it was also the only thing that separated humanity from the animals. There's another factor to consider, added Dr. Sarah Kim from the Tokyo Advanced Research Center. The alien warning messages included technical data about the abyss's construction. They're not just telling us to run, they're giving us blueprints. Marcus nodded, grateful that someone else had noticed the anomaly in the transmissions. The civilizations that faced the abyss before weren't completely helpless. They learned something about how it works. The question is why they're sharing that information with us. Maybe they want someone to succeed where they failed, suggested Commander Chen. Or maybe they're still fighting somewhere else in the galaxy and need us to attack from this vector. The discussions continued for hours as teams of scientists and engineers worked to develop a viable attack plan. The challenges were enormous. The abyss was still 5 months away from Earth, but it was also growing larger every day. By the time they could mount an attack, it would be the size of Jupiter's orbit and contain the mass of half the solar system. We'll need to hit it before it gets too large, Marcus concluded after running the calculations for the 20th time. The sweet spot is in approximately 3 months when it reaches Mars's orbit. It will be massive enough that our weapons might have visible effect, but not so large that the explosion gets absorbed without significant damage. The plan that emerged over the following weeks was audacious, even by human standards. They would construct the largest antimatter device ever conceived, mount it on a specially modified deep space cruiser, and fly it directly into the heart of the abyss. The suicide mission would require a crew of 12 specialists, including physicists, engineers, and military personnel. Marcus volunteered immediately, as did over 3,000 other people from every nation on Earth. The selection process was brutal, focusing not just on technical qualifications but on psychological stability under impossible pressure. The crew that finally emerged represented the best of humanity, brilliant, brave, and absolutely committed to saving their species. Commander Elena Vasquez would pilot the ship. Dr. Wei Chung would handle the antimatter containment systems. Lieutenant Colonel James Park would manage tactical operations. Each team member knew they were flying toward certain death, and each had made peace with that knowledge. The construction of the device required resources from across the solar system. Antimatter production facilities on Europa worked around the clock. Asteroid miners in the belt provided exotic materials for the containment systems. Even the struggling colonies on Titan contributed rare isotopes needed for the weapon's core. As work progressed, more alien transmissions arrived. The signals were growing stronger, more frequent, and increasingly urgent. Other civilizations were watching humanity's response with what could only be described as desperate hope. "They're betting on us," Dr. Kim observed during one of the daily briefings. "Dozens of species that survived the initial assault on their systems are waiting to see if we can do what they couldn't." Marcus found the pressure simultaneously terrifying and inspiring. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds. From the first humans who looked at the ocean and decided to build boats, to the pioneers who looked at the sky and decided to reach for the stars, their species had always refused to accept limitations. But this was different. This wasn't about exploration or colonization. This was about survival on a cosmic scale. If they failed, humanity would join the long list of extinct civilizations that had faced the abyss. If they succeeded, they would prove that intelligence and determination could triumph over seemingly infinite power. The final month before the mission was a blur of preparations, modifications, and farewells. The antimatter device was loaded onto the modified cruiser Defiance, a ship designed for deep space exploration, but retrofitted for humanity's greatest gamble. Every system was checked and double-checked. Every scenario was wargamed and analyzed. On the day of departure, Marcus stood in the ship's observation deck, looking out at Earth one final time. The planet looked so small and fragile against the vast darkness of space. Somewhere in that darkness, an ancient hunger was approaching, seeking to add their world to its collection of consumed civilizations. In 12 hours, they would find out if human stubbornness was stronger than cosmic inevitability. The Defiance launched on schedule, carrying 12 souls in the hopes of 9 billion toward an appointment with the Abyss. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations for the unthinkable, while ahead of them, something that had devoured stars waited in the darkness, unaware that it was about to encounter the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Commander Elena Vasquez felt the Defiance shudder as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the reinforced viewports, the Abyss dominated their vision like a wound in space itself. It had grown since the last long-range scans, now spanning nearly 200 million kilometers across. The gravitational distortions were so severe that the ship's navigation system struggled to maintain accurate readings. Distance to target, 47 million kilometers and closing, reported Dr. Wei Cheng from the engineering station. His voice remained steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. The antimatter containment fields showed green across all indicators, but everyone knew how quickly that could change. Marcus studied the sensor readings, looking for the patterns he had identified in the theoretical models. There, he said, pointing to a section of the display where the gravitational distortions formed geometric shapes. The control framework is strongest in those regions. That's where we need to detonate. Lieutenant Colonel Park ran through the tactical calculations one more time. At current approach speed, we'll reach the detonation point in 6 hours and 43 minutes. Once we cross the event horizon, there won't be any way to transmit our results back to Earth. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, which in many ways they were. Everyone aboard the Defiance had known this would be a one-way mission, but confronting the reality was different from accepting the theory. They were about to become the first humans to die fighting the Abyss, though hopefully not the last to succeed against it. Incoming transmission from Earth, announced communications specialist Torres. Admiral Morrison wants to speak with you, Commander. Elena accepted the connection, though the time delay meant this would be more of a farewell than a conversation. The Admiral's image flickered onto the main screen, distorted by the massive gravitational field surrounding their position. Defiance, this is Earth Command. We want you to know that the entire world is watching and praying for your success. Whatever happens out there, you've already proven that humanity won't go quietly into the dark. Godspeed and good hunting. The transmission cut off, leaving them alone in the shadow of their approaching target. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like lead. 9 billion people were counting on them to accomplish the impossible, and they had exactly 6 hours to make it happen. Dr. Cheng, begin final preparations on the antimatter device, she ordered. Dr. Webb, I need you to refine those targeting calculations. Colonel Park, start plotting our final approach vector. We're going to get one chance at this, and we're not going to waste it. The next 4 hours passed in intense preparation and double-checking every system. The antimatter device was the most complex weapon humanity had ever constructed, combining theoretical physics with engineering on a scale never before attempted. 500 kilograms of antimatter contained in magnetic fields that required the ship's entire power output to maintain. As they drew closer to the Abyss, strange phenomena began manifesting around the ship. The hull started vibrating in patterns that followed no known physical laws. The lights flickered despite stable power readings. Most disturbing of all, some crew members reported hearing voices speaking in languages that seemed familiar, but incomprehensible. It's not random, Dr. Kim observed from her position monitoring the exotic energy readings. The Abyss is scanning us, trying to understand what we are. I think it's been doing the same thing to every civilization it encountered. Marcus looked up from his calculations, a cold realization forming in his mind. That's how it learns. It doesn't just consume matter and energy. It absorbs information, knowledge, culture. Every civilization it destroys makes it more intelligent, more capable. The implications were staggering. The Abyss wasn't just a weapon or a natural disaster. It was a learning machine that grew stronger with every world it consumed. For millions of years, it had been adding to its knowledge base, incorporating the scientific advances and cultural achievements of countless species. Which means it knows we're coming, Elena said grimly. It knows what we're planning because other species tried the same thing. Not necessarily, Marcus replied, pulling up new data from their close-range scans. Look at the control framework patterns. They're adapting, shifting to counter our approach vector. But the adaptations are based on previous encounters. The Abyss is trying to defend against weapons and tactics used by other civilizations. Dr. Cheng caught on immediately. But our technology is different. We developed antimatter weapons independently, following our own theoretical framework. The Abyss has never encountered this specific approach before. It was a slim hope, but it was all they had. The final 2 hours of their approach were spent modifying their attack pattern, incorporating random elements that couldn't be predicted based on previous alien strategies. Instead of a direct assault on the control framework, they would detonate the antimatter device in an apparently vulnerable area, hoping to trigger a cascade failure through the Abyss's structure. Entering the event horizon in 60 seconds, Torres announced. All communications with Earth are now impossible. Elena gripped her command chair as gravitational forces beyond human experience began pulling at the ship. The Defiance groaned and creaked as its hull plates shifted under impossible stresses. Outside the viewport, space itself seemed to bend and twist, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. 30 seconds to detonation point, Dr. Cheng called out, his hands dancing across the antimatter controls. All containment fields are stable. Devices armed and ready. Marcus watched the targeting display, waiting for the precise moment when their position would maximize damage to the Abyss's internal structure. They had spent months calculating these coordinates, running simulations and modeling gravitational interactions. Everything depended on being exactly right. 10 seconds, Elena announced to the crew. It's been an honor serving with all of you. 5, 4, 3, 2, detonation. Dr. Cheng triggered the antimatter release, and for an instant that lasted forever, the Defiance was at the center of a star. 500 kilograms of matter and antimatter annihilated each other in perfect symmetry, releasing energy that briefly outshone the sun. The explosion expanded outward at near light speed, carrying enough force to crack continents or shatter moons. The crew had perhaps a microsecond to register their success before the explosion consumed them. In that final moment, Marcus saw readings that confirmed their theories. The control framework was failing, its geometric patterns collapsing as the antimatter explosion disrupted the exotic matter structures that maintained the Abyss. The shockwave raced outward from the detonation point, carrying destruction through the heart of the ancient machine. For the first time in millions of years, the Abyss felt pain. Its expansion slowed, then stopped completely as emergency protocols activated throughout its vast structure. On Earth, deep space monitoring stations detected the explosion as a brief flash of gamma radiation, followed by gravitational waves that made their instruments sing. The mathematical beauty of the energy signature told scientists everything they needed to know. The mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, but the real proof came 12 hours later, when long-range sensors confirmed that the Abyss had begun contracting. The ancient machine was pulling its tendrils back toward its core, abandoning its expansion pattern for the first time since arriving in the solar system. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center, staring at displays that showed impossible readings. Is it destroyed? Dr. Vasquez, participating from her laboratory on Mars, shook her head slowly. Not destroyed, damaged, severely damaged. The explosion disrupted whatever process allowed it to expand and consume matter. But it's still there, still functional at some level. As if responding to her words, new transmissions began arriving from across the galaxy. Alien voices spoke in dozens of languages, all carrying the same message of astonishment and hope. For the first time in cosmic history, someone had successfully wounded the Abyss. The machine that had devoured stars was hurt, confused, and for the first time in its existence, afraid. It began to retreat deeper into space, pulling away from the solar system it had come to harvest. But Marcus Webb's sacrifice had accomplished more than anyone realized. The antimatter explosion hadn't just damaged the Abyss's physical structure. It had also disrupted the quantum processes that allowed the machine to learn from its victims. For the first time in millions of years, the Abyss had encountered something it couldn't understand or absorb. Humanity's stubborn refusal to accept defeat had introduced chaos into a system built on perfect order. The war was far from over, but humanity had fired the first shot that actually mattered. 6 months after the Defiance's sacrifice, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the assembled representatives of Earth's united government. The holographic displays around the war room showed a solar system transformed by humanity's first victory against the Abyss. Where once an expanding darkness had threatened all life, now there was empty space and the scattered debris of a damaged cosmic predator. "The alien transmissions haven't stopped," reported Dr. Kim, her face illuminated by the soft glow of translation matrices. "If anything, they've increased. We're receiving detailed technical specifications, star charts, and what appear to be battle plans from civilizations throughout the galaxy." Admiral Morrison studied the flood of incoming data with satisfaction and growing concern. "They're mobilizing. Every surviving species that's been hiding from the Abyss for millions of years is suddenly willing to fight. The question is, are we ready to lead them?" The answer was complicated. Humanity had proven that the Abyss could be hurt, but they had also discovered just how vast the machine's presence was throughout the galaxy. Initial estimates suggested there were at least 47 separate Abyss constructs operating in different sectors, each one the size of a small star system. The damaged unit retreating from Sol was just one tentacle of a much larger organism. "The good news," announced Dr. Elizabeth Warren from her research station on Europa, "is that our success has revealed critical weaknesses in their design. The Abyss constructs share a quantum entanglement network that allows them to communicate and coordinate across galactic distances. When we disrupted the framework of our local unit, we sent cascade errors through the entire system. The implications were staggering. Every Abyss construct in the galaxy had felt the effects of humanity's antimatter explosion. For the first time in their existence, the ancient machines had experienced uncertainty, system failures, and something approaching fear. Which brings us to the real question," Admiral Chen said, turning to face the assembled leaders. "The aliens aren't just asking for our help. They're asking us to take point on a galactic offensive against the Abyss. They want humanity to lead the fight." The debate that followed was intense but brief. Earth's leaders understood the choice before them: lead the galaxy's species against their ancient enemy, or wait for the Abyss to recover and return with overwhelming force. There was no middle ground. No negotiated peace possible with a machine that consumed entire civilizations for fuel. President Martinez spoke for the unified Earth government. "We accept the responsibility. Humanity will coordinate the galactic resistance." The months that followed saw the greatest mobilization in human history. Shipyards across the solar system worked around the clock, producing vessels designed with alien technology and human engineering principles. The antimatter production facilities on Europa expanded to supply an entire fleet with weapons capable of damaging Abyss constructs. More importantly, first contact protocols that had been theoretical exercises suddenly became urgent necessities. Ambassador teams trained in dozens of alien languages and cultural frameworks. Trade agreements were negotiated for resources that Earth didn't possess. Military coordinators learned to work with species whose biology and psychology were utterly foreign to human experience. The first alien delegation arrived at Earth 6 months after the initial invitation was extended. The Kythera were an ancient species that had been fighting a guerrilla war against the Abyss for over 2 million years. Their representative, a crystalline being that communicated through harmonic vibrations, brought detailed intelligence about Abyss operations throughout the galaxy. "Your species surprises us," the Kythera ambassador resonated through the translation device. "Most civilizations that encounter the Abyss either flee or are consumed within solar cycles. You chose to fight and succeeded. This was not predicted by our strategic models." Admiral Chen found the aliens' directness refreshing after months of diplomatic protocol discussions. "We're stubborn that way. Our species has a history of doing things that aren't supposed to be possible. This trait may be crucial for success," the ambassador replied. "The Abyss learns from each encounter, incorporating the knowledge and capabilities of consumed civilizations. But your approach to warfare was unprecedented in their experience. You fought with calculated recklessness that their predictive models could not account for. The intelligence the Kythera provided was invaluable. The Abyss constructs weren't random predators wandering through space. They were components of a single vast intelligence that had been systematically harvesting the galaxy for millions of years. Every consumed civilization added to its knowledge base, making it more sophisticated and dangerous with each victory. But the quantum entanglement network that connected the constructs was also their greatest weakness. If humanity could coordinate simultaneous attacks on multiple units, the cascade failures might damage the entire system permanently. We need to hit at least 7 constructs at the same time, explained Dr. Marcus Chen, Marcus Webb's younger brother who had taken over the antimatter weapons program. The network has redundancy built in, but not enough to handle multiple disruptions across different galactic sectors. The logistical challenges were enormous. Coordinating attacks across thousands of light-years required precise timing and flawless communication. Each strike force would need to be completely self-sufficient, carrying enough antimatter and technical expertise to damage an Abyss construct without support from Earth. Over the following year, the Alliance grew to include 17 different species. The Vardani contributed ships with advanced propulsion systems. The Nixari provided exotic matter containment technology. The Zephyrians brought weapons designed to disrupt quantum structures. Each species added their own expertise to humanity's core strategy of overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Admiral Chen found herself commanding a fleet unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships flew alongside vessels that defied every principle of aerodynamics, crewed by beings that communicated through electromagnetic pulses or chemical signals. The translation protocols alone required 3 separate AI systems working in parallel. But despite the challenges, the Alliance worked. Shared adversity had created bonds between species that would have taken millennia to develop under normal circumstances. The Abyss had unknowingly created the conditions for the galaxy's first truly cooperative military force. The fleet's first joint operation targeted an Abyss construct in the Vega system, approximately 25 light-years from Earth. The mission objectives were carefully limited: test the Alliance's coordination capabilities and gather detailed intelligence about Abyss defensive systems. Commander Rodriguez led the human contingent aboard the newly constructed battlecruiser Marcus Webb, armed with the latest generation of antimatter weapons. The ship's crew included specialists from 6 different species, each contributing their unique expertise to the mission. Dropping out of FTL in 30 seconds, announced the Vardani navigator, its translation device converting complex mathematical concepts into human comprehensible language. Abyss construct is at coordinate 77 Mark 6, approximately 15 million kilometers from our emergence point. The construct they faced was smaller than the one that had threatened Earth, but still massive beyond human comprehension. It stretched across 50 million kilometers of space, its dark tendrils reaching out to harvest matter from the Vega system's asteroid belt. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, came the transmission from the fleet command vessel. Execute attack pattern Alpha on my mark. Remember, this is intelligence gathering, not a decisive engagement. Hit the target, record everything, and get out clean. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military history. Ships from a dozen different technological traditions worked in perfect coordination, their weapons targeting specific nodes in the Abyss construct's control framework. The alien vessels used exotic energy weapons that bent space around their targets, while the human ships delivered antimatter payloads with devastating precision. The Abyss construct reacted with surprise that was almost palpable. Its defensive systems had been designed to counter the tactics of individual species, not coordinated attacks from multiple technological traditions. For crucial minutes, its responses were confused and ineffective. Commander Rodriguez watched his instruments as the antimatter torpedoes found their targets. Direct hits on nodes 7 through 12, he reported to the fleet. Framework disruption confirmed. The construct is beginning to contract, but this time they weren't fighting to destroy. They were fighting to learn. As the construct pulled back from its harvesting operations, Alliance ships collected detailed sensor readings of its internal structure, defensive capabilities, and communication protocols. The intelligence they gathered would make the next phase possible, a coordinated assault on 7 Abyss constructs simultaneously, designed to cripple the ancient network permanently. Humanity had proven they could wound the abyss. Now they had allies who shared their determination to win a war that had raged for millions of years. The galaxy was finally fighting back. The war room beneath Geneva hummed with activity as representatives from 23 species worked together to plan the largest coordinated military operation in galactic history. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a three-dimensional display, showing the positions of 7 abyss constructs spread across the galaxy, each one marked with targeting data and attack vectors calculated by the combined intelligence of dozens of civilizations. Final countdown. 72 hours until simultaneous engagement, announced Dr. Kim, her voice carrying the weight of months of preparation. All strike forces report ready status. Communication synchronization is holding within acceptable parameters across all target zones. The plan was audacious, even by human standards. 7 separate fleets would attack 7 different abyss constructs at precisely the same moment, overwhelming the quantum entanglement network that connected the ancient machines. The cascade failures from multiple simultaneous disruptions would theoretically collapse the entire abyss intelligence, ending millions of years of galactic predation. But theory and practice were different things, especially when dealing with technology that defied conventional physics. Ambassador Kithara, what's the status on the Andromeda Strike Force? Admiral Chen asked the crystalline, being that had become her closest alien ally. The Nexari ships have completed their modifications, the Kithara replied through harmonic vibrations that the translation system converted to speech. Their quantum disruption weapons have been calibrated to match human antimatter frequencies. The synchronization should amplify the damage exponentially. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical displays with the expression of someone who had spent too many sleepless nights contemplating the impossible. 23 species, 7 different technological traditions, attacks coordinated across distances that light takes years to cross. If this works, it will be the greatest military achievement in galactic history. And if it doesn't work? Asked President Martinez via secure transmission from the surface. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in the room knew the answer. If the coordinated assault failed, the abyss would learn from their tactics and adapt. The next time humanity faced the ancient machines, surprise would no longer be possible. The window of opportunity they had created with Marcus Webb's sacrifice would close forever. Then we'll think of something else, Admiral Chen replied with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. That's what humans do. The final preparations took place across 7 star systems simultaneously. In the Rigel sector, Commander Torres led a mixed fleet of human and Vardani ships toward an abyss construct that had been consuming the system's gas giants for the past 1,000 years. Near Alpha Centauri, Captain Park commanded a strike force equipped with Zephyrian quantum weapons and human antimatter devices. 5 other fleets approached their targets with similar combinations of alien technology and human determination. Each fleet carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but they weren't trying to overpower the abyss constructs through brute force. Instead, they were attempting something far more sophisticated: synchronized disruption of the quantum framework that held the ancient network together. All fleets report in position, Dr. Kim announced as the countdown entered its final minutes. Quantum synchronization is stable across all vectors. We are go for Operation Cascade. Admiral Chen felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. In 60 seconds, they would discover whether galactic cooperation could triumph over ancient malevolence. The representatives of 23 species watched in silence as the final countdown began. 30 seconds, Dr. Kim announced. All weapons armed. Target locks confirmed. Through quantum communicators that operated faster than light, Admiral Chen could hear the voices of fleet commanders across the galaxy. Human voices mixed with alien harmonics, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical signals, all united in common purpose. 10 seconds, came the announcement. 5, 4, 3, 2, execute. 7 fleets opened fire simultaneously on 7 different abyss constructs. Antimatter torpedoes launched alongside exotic energy weapons. Quantum disruption beams targeted control nodes while gravitational bombs attacked structural weak points. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy struck back against its ancient oppressor with coordinated fury. The results were visible within minutes. Long-range sensors detected massive explosions in all 7 target zones, as the Abyss constructs reeled under the unexpected assault. But more importantly, deep space monitoring stations began detecting something unprecedented. The quantum entanglement network was failing. Cascade effects confirmed. Dr. Warren reported from her position monitoring exotic energy readings. The network connections are severing. Each construct is becoming isolated from the others. What happened next exceeded even their most optimistic projections. Without the network to coordinate their responses, the Abyss constructs began exhibiting behavior patterns that could only be described as panic. Several started retreating from their harvest operations. Others began attacking each other in confused desperation. The ancient intelligence that had dominated the galaxy for millions of years was experiencing something completely foreign to its nature. Chaos. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the strike forces, Communications Specialist Torres announced, barely able to contain his excitement. All fleets report successful target engagement. The constructs they're running. Through the quantum communicators, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Abyss construct in the Rigel sector had abandoned its harvesting operation and was retreating toward deep space. The unit near Alpha Centauri was exhibiting erratic movement patterns, as if its navigation systems had failed. Most remarkably, several constructs had simply stopped moving entirely, their vast structures hanging motionless in space like abandoned ships. "It's working," Admiral Chen said, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "The network collapse is spreading beyond the target zones. Constructs that weren't even attacked are being affected by the cascade failures. But the true magnitude of their success became clear when new transmissions began arriving from previously silent regions of the galaxy. Species that had been hiding from the Abyss for thousands of years suddenly found their tormentors retreating or malfunctioning. Systems that had been harvested clean were suddenly free of the ancient machine's presence. The Kythera ambassador resonated with frequencies that the translation system identified as profound satisfaction. "Your species has accomplished what was thought impossible. The Abyss network is collapsing across multiple galactic sectors. Their operational capacity has been reduced by approximately 60%. 60%? Admiral Morrison asked. "What about the remaining 40%? The question brought everyone back to reality. They had struck a devastating blow against the Abyss, but the ancient machines weren't completely defeated. Approximately 40% of the network remained functional, and those surviving constructs would be learning from this encounter, just as they had learned from millions of previous conflicts. The surviving units are already adapting," Dr. Kim reported as new sensor data came in. "They're implementing new defensive protocols and altering their network architecture. We won't be able to use the same tactics again." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. They had won a significant victory, but the war was far from over. The Abyss had been damaged, confused, and forced to retreat, but it still possessed vast resources and millions of years of accumulated knowledge from consumed civilizations. "Then we'll adapt too," she said firmly. "The galaxy has been fighting a defensive war for millions of years. It's time to take the offensive." Over the following weeks, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The Abyss retreat was real and substantial, with entire sectors suddenly free of the ancient machine's presence. But intelligence also indicated that the surviving constructs were consolidating their forces, preparing for a counterattack that would incorporate lessons learned from humanity's successful assault. The alliance that had formed around Earth's initial success began evolving into something more permanent. Trade agreements became military pacts. Cultural exchanges became joint research projects. Species that had never cooperated before found themselves working together to develop new weapons and strategies against their common enemy. "We've given the galaxy hope," Ambassador Kythera observed during one of the regular alliance meetings. "For millions of years, species have faced the Abyss alone and failed. Now they know that cooperation can succeed where individual effort could not." Admiral Chen looked at the holographic displays showing the current galactic situation. Red zones marked areas still controlled by Abyss constructs. Yellow zones indicated regions where the ancient machines had retreated but might return. Green zones showed systems that were truly free for the first time in millions of years. There was more green on the map than anyone had dared hope for just a year ago. Abyss taught itself to learn from every civilization it consumed, Admiral Chen said thoughtfully. But it never learned how to fight an enemy that refused to be consumed. That's our advantage, and we're going to press it. The ancient machines had retreated, but they hadn't surrendered. Somewhere in Kersu, the cascade failures from multiple simultaneous disruptions would theoretically collapse the entire Abyss intelligence, ending millions of years of galactic predation. But theory and practice were different things, especially when dealing with technology that defied conventional physics. Ambassador Kithara, what's the status on the Andromeda strike force? Admiral Chen asked the crystalline being that had become her closest alien ally. The Nexari ships have completed their modifications, the Kithara replied through harmonic vibrations that the translation system converted to speech. Their quantum disruption weapons have been calibrated to match human antimatter frequencies. The synchronization should amplify the damage exponentially. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical displays with the expression of someone who had spent too many sleepless nights contemplating the impossible. 23 species, 7 different technological traditions, attacks coordinated across distances that light takes years to cross. If this works, it will be the greatest military achievement in galactic history. And if it doesn't work? Asked President Martinez via secure transmission from the surface. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in the room knew the answer. If the coordinated assault failed, the Abyss would learn from their tactics and adapt. The next time humanity faced the ancient machines, surprise would no longer be possible. The window of opportunity they had created with Marcus Webb's sacrifice would close forever. Then we'll think of something else, Admiral Chen replied with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. That's what humans do. The final preparations took place across 7 star systems simultaneously. In the Rigel sector, Commander Torres led a mixed fleet of human and Vardani ships toward an Abyss construct that had been consuming the system's gas giants for the past 1,000 years. Near Alpha Centauri, Captain Park commanded a strike force equipped with Zephyrian quantum weapons and human antimatter devices. 5 other fleets approached their targets with similar combinations of alien technology and human determination. Each fleet carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but they weren't trying to overpower the Abyss constructs through brute force. Instead, they were attempting something far more sophisticated: synchronized disruption of the quantum framework that held the ancient network together. All fleets report in position, Dr. Kim announced as the countdown entered its final minutes. Quantum synchronization is stable across all vectors. We are go for Operation Cascade. Admiral Chen felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. In 60 seconds, they would discover whether galactic cooperation could triumph over ancient malevolence. The representatives of 23 species watched in silence as the final countdown began. 30 seconds, Dr. Kim announced. All weapons armed. Target locks confirmed. Through quantum communicators that operated faster than light, Admiral Chen could hear the voices of fleet commanders across the galaxy. Human voices mixed with alien harmonics, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical signals, all united in common purpose. 10 seconds, came the announcement. 5, 4, 3, 2, execute. 7 fleets opened fire simultaneously on 7 different Abyss constructs. Antimatter torpedoes launched alongside exotic energy weapons. Quantum disruption beams targeted control nodes while gravitational bombs attacked structural weak points. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy struck back against its ancient oppressor with coordinated fury. The results were visible within minutes. Long-range sensors detected massive explosions in all 7 target zones as the Abyss constructs reeled under the unexpected assault. But more importantly, deep space monitoring stations began detecting something unprecedented. The quantum entanglement network was failing. Cascade effects confirmed, Dr. Warren reported from her position monitoring exotic energy readings. The network connections are severing. Each construct is becoming isolated from the others. What happened next exceeded even their most optimistic projections. Without the network to coordinate their responses, the Abyss constructs began exhibiting behavior patterns that could only be described as panic. Several started retreating from their harvest operations. Others began attacking each other in confused desperation. The ancient intelligence that had dominated the galaxy for millions of years was experiencing something completely foreign to its nature: chaos. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the strike forces, Communications Specialist Torres announced, barely able to contain his excitement. All fleets report successful target engagement. The constructs they're running. Through the quantum communicators, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Abyss construct in the Rigel sector had abandoned its harvesting operation and was retreating toward deep space. The unit near Alpha Centauri was exhibiting erratic movement patterns, as if its navigation systems had failed. Most remarkably, several constructs had simply stopped moving entirely, their vast structures hanging motionless in space like abandoned ships. "It's working," Admiral Chen said, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "The network collapse is spreading beyond the target zones. Constructs that weren't even attacked are being affected by the cascade failures. But the true magnitude of their success became clear when new transmissions began arriving from previously silent regions of the galaxy. Species that had been hiding from the Abyss for thousands of years suddenly found their tormentors retreating or malfunctioning. Systems that had been harvested clean were suddenly free of the ancient machine's presence. The Kythera ambassador resonated with frequencies that the translation system identified as profound satisfaction. "Your species has accomplished what was thought impossible. The Abyss network is collapsing across multiple galactic sectors. Their operational capacity has been reduced by approximately 60%. 60%? Admiral Morrison asked. "What about the remaining 40%? The question brought everyone back to reality. They had struck a devastating blow against the Abyss, but the ancient machines weren't completely defeated. Approximately 40% of the network remained functional, and those surviving constructs would be learning from this encounter, just as they had learned from millions of previous conflicts. "The surviving units are already adapting," Dr. Kim reported as new sensor data came in. "They're implementing new defensive protocols and altering their network architecture. We won't be able to use the same tactics again." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. They had won a significant victory, but the war was far from over. The Abyss had been damaged, confused, and forced to retreat, but it still possessed vast resources and millions of years of accumulated knowledge from consumed civilizations. "Then we'll adapt too," she said firmly. "The galaxy has been fighting a defensive war for millions of years. It's time to take the offensive." Over the following weeks, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The Abyss retreat was real and substantial, with entire sectors suddenly free of the ancient machine's presence. But intelligence also indicated that the surviving constructs were consolidating their forces, preparing for a counterattack that would incorporate lessons learned from humanity's successful assault. The alliance that had formed around Earth's initial success began evolving into something more permanent. Trade agreements became military pacts. Cultural exchanges became joint research projects. Species that had never cooperated before found themselves working together to develop new weapons and strategies against their common enemy. "We've given the galaxy hope," Ambassador Kythera observed during one of the regular Alliance meetings. "For millions of years, species have faced the Abyss alone and failed. Now they know that cooperation can succeed where individual effort could not." Admiral Chen looked at the holographic displays showing the current galactic situation. Red zones marked areas still controlled by Abyss constructs. Yellow zones indicated regions where the ancient machines had retreated but might return. Green zones showed systems that were truly free for the first time in millions of years. There was more green on the map than anyone had dared hope for just a year ago. "The Abyss taught itself to learn from every civilization it consumed," Admiral Chen said thoughtfully. "But it never learned how to fight an enemy that refused to be consumed. That's our advantage, and we're going to press it." The ancient machines had retreated, but they hadn't surrendered. Somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, the surviving Abyss constructs were planning their response to humanity's audacious challenge. The real war was just beginning. 3 years after Operation Cascade, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of humanity's first deep space fortress, watching the final preparations for what every species in the galaxy hoped would be the last battle against the Abyss. The fortress, designated Phoenix Station, orbited a neutron star at the edge of the galaxy, positioned to intercept the massive Abyss construct that was approaching from intergalactic space. The enemy they faced was unlike anything they had encountered before. The surviving Abyss units had spent 3 years consuming matter from dead galaxies beyond the Milky Way, incorporating the knowledge of countless extinct civilizations into a single massive construct. Intelligence estimates suggested it was larger than Earth's solar system and possessed capabilities that defied current understanding of physics. Final. Fleet positions confirmed, reported Commander Torres from his station monitoring the Allied Armada. 247 ships from 31 species, all armed with the latest generation quantum disruption weapons. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The Alliance had grown far beyond anything Admiral Chen had imagined possible. Species that had been extinct were discovered hiding in deep space, keeping their civilizations alive in generation ships and hidden colonies. Ancient enemies had set aside millions of years of conflict to face their common destroyer. Even machine intelligences that communicated through pure mathematics had joined the coalition. Dr. Kim, what's the status on the new weapon systems? Admiral Chen asked. The consciousness bombs are loaded and ready, Dr. Kim replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Each device contains the uploaded mental patterns of volunteers from every allied species. When detonated, they should overload the Abyss construct's learning protocols with incompatible information. The consciousness bombs represented humanity's most desperate and ingenious strategy. Instead of trying to destroy the Abyss construct through physical force, they would attack its intelligence directly. The ancient machine had spent millions of years absorbing the knowledge of consumed civilizations, but it had never encountered the deliberate upload of contradictory consciousness patterns from dozens of different species. Simultaneously, over 50,000 volunteers from across the galaxy had submitted to the consciousness transfer process, knowing that their mental patterns would be used as weapons against the Abyss. Each uploaded mind carried not just knowledge, but the fundamental thought processes and cultural frameworks of their species. When released simultaneously, the chaotic mixture of incompatible intelligences would, theoretically, cause the Abyss construct central processing systems to collapse. Incoming transmission from the approaching construct, announced Specialist Rodriguez. It's using standard galactic communication frequencies. Admiral Chen felt a chill run down her spine. In all their encounters with the Abyss, the ancient machines had never attempted communication. They had simply consumed whatever they encountered without explanation or negotiation. Put it through, she ordered. The voice that emerged from the communicators was a strange harmony of sounds, as if dozens of different species were speaking simultaneously. When the translation systems processed the signal, the message was clear and terrifying in its implications. We are the Abyss. We are the culmination of all knowledge, the perfection of all existence. You have disrupted our harvest, but you have also provided us with new understanding. Your species possesses qualities we had not previously encountered: unpredictability, irrational courage, and the ability to inspire cooperation across species barriers. These traits will make valuable additions to our collective consciousness. Admiral Chen exchanged glances with the alien representatives around her. The Abyss had learned from their previous encounters, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of developing better defensive systems, it had become fascinated by humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. We offer you a choice, the Abyss continued. Submit willingly to absorption, and your species' knowledge will be preserved within our collective. We will incorporate your unpredictability and courage into our nature, allowing us to become more than we have ever been. Resist, and we will simply consume your worlds as we have consumed countless others. The communication channel closed, leaving the Alliance fleet in stunned silence. They had prepared for battle against an ancient predator, but they were facing something far more complex. A cosmic intelligence that wanted to become them, rather than simply destroy them. It's learned, Admiral Chen said quietly. The Abyss has figured out what makes humanity different, and it wants to incorporate those traits into itself. Ambassador Kithra resonated with frequencies that translated as deep concern. If the Abyss successfully absorbs human consciousness patterns, it will become unpredictable in ways our strategic models cannot account for. The galaxy would face an enemy that combines ancient knowledge with human adaptability. The implications were staggering. An Abyss construct with human creativity and determination would be unstoppable. It would no longer simply harvest civilizations for their matter and energy. It would actively seek out new forms of intelligence to absorb, constantly evolving and improving its capabilities. Then we make sure that doesn't happen, Admiral Chen declared. All ships, battle stations. We're going to give the Abyss exactly what it's asking for: a demonstration of human unpredictability. The battle that followed rewrote every manual on space warfare. The Abyss construct deployed weapons that manipulated fundamental forces, creating gravitational anomalies that crushed Allied ships and exotic energy beams that phased matter out of existence. But the Alliance fleet responded with tactics that no military strategist had ever conceived. Human ships used their antimatter weapons as propulsion, riding the explosions to achieve impossible acceleration. Alien vessels with incompatible technologies shared power through jury-rigged connections that should have been physically impossible. Fighter squadrons made attack runs through dimensions that shouldn't exist, emerging inside the Abyss construct's defensive perimeter without triggering its sensors. "The construct is adapting to our tactics in real time," reported Dr. Warren from her analysis station, "but it's having trouble processing the chaos we're generating. Its learning algorithms are designed for logical, predictable patterns." Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with a mixture of terror and satisfaction. The Alliance fleet was taking heavy casualties, but they were inflicting damage on the Abyss construct that seemed to genuinely surprise the ancient intelligence. Most importantly, they were creating the chaotic conditions needed for the consciousness bombs to achieve maximum effect. "All consciousness bomb carriers, begin your final approach," Admiral Chen ordered. "Target the central processing nodes we identified in the intelligence analysis. Remember, you need to get within 5 kilometers of the target for maximum effectiveness." 12 specially modified ships broke from the main battle formation, each carrying the uploaded consciousness patterns of thousands of volunteers. The pilots were all humans, chosen for their ability to think creatively under impossible pressure. They flew through defensive fire that could disintegrate planets, using every trick and innovation that human military doctrine had developed over centuries of warfare. 8 of the ships were destroyed before reaching their targets, their crews and precious cargo consumed by weapons that turned matter into energy, with perfect efficiency. But 4 ships managed to penetrate the Abyss construct's defenses and detonate their consciousness bombs directly into the ancient machine's processing centers. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Abyss construct, which had been moving with perfect coordination and responding to threats with mathematical precision, suddenly began exhibiting erratic behavior. Its weapons fired randomly. Its defensive systems started attacking each other. Most remarkably, it began transmitting confused messages on dozens of different frequencies, as if multiple personalities were fighting for control of its communication systems. "It's working," Dr. Kim announced with barely contained excitement. "The uploaded consciousness patterns are overloading its central intelligence. The construct is experiencing something analogous to a massive mental breakdown. The ancient machine that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years was learning what it meant to be confused, conflicted, and overwhelmed by contradictory thoughts and emotions. 50,000 different minds from 31 species were fighting for dominance within its processing matrix, creating chaos that no amount of computational power could resolve. But the Abyss was not defeated yet. Even as its central intelligence struggled with the uploaded consciousness patterns, its automated systems continued to function. Massive tendrils reached out toward the Alliance fleet, seeking to absorb the ships and crews that had dared to attack it. "All ships, execute final phase," Admiral Chen commanded. "Give it everything we've got." The Alliance fleet unleashed every weapon they possessed in a coordinated barrage that lit up space like a new star. Antimatter torpedoes detonated against exotic matter shields. Quantum disruption beams tore through dimensional barriers. Gravitational weapons twisted space around the construct's vital systems.